All right, let's talk some racing here. And for Kyle Weatherman, that's been his life. In 2017, a major milestone, the young driver competed in a pair of Cup races. He debuted in Martinsville in October, then got to run in Phoenix. It's been a family affair. In fact, his dad, Darren, has a museum of sorts inside the warehouse at his place of business, St. Charles Glass and Glazing.
That's a Bandolero car, so that's basically what came up right after a go-kart. Rear suspension, solid front end.
He's driving that at what age?
8 years old to 12. They started when they were 5 and 6, racing go-karts at an average of 80 to 100 miles an hour. Those bandos pretty well averaged 50 to 60, and then from there they went to the legend car, which is, you know, more of what that car is. It's hanging over there.
Somebody's hood here, is that what?
Yeah, that was the second ARCA race that Kyle ran. We disassembled it when we got back. He actually finished, that car up there finished third, which was his ARCA debut at Salem, Indiana.
Well, Dad gave us the tour out there in St. Charles, and here is Kyle Weatherman with us on Fox 2 Game Day. What was it like? Because I'm sure the dream, the goal was always make it to NASCAR's top circuit. You got to do that twice last year. What was it like?
It was amazing. Like you guys said, racing against Dale Earnhardt Jr., you know, Jimmy Johnson, Carl Edwards. It was crazy. So it was definitely a dream come true, and hopefully it's just the beginning.
When did it start? When did you say, you know what, Dad, I wouldn't mind taking the car for a spin? And he said, yes, but you're only 6. I mean, when did you start racing? Yeah,
so it's actually funny. So Brian Main is how we really got started in racing, and he's related to David Reagan. And Brian's raced go-karts, you know, through his years, and just joking around actually brought us to a go-kart track or a go-kart shop, and from then on is really when it started. Actually, that day we left with a go-kart, we went there just kind of joking around, looking at stuff, and ended up buying one that day, and we were racing that weekend.
So you've done ARCA, Legends, all these different circuits to work your way up, obviously. Tell us about the Legends, because at the time I think they said you were the youngest champion they ever had.
Yes, sir. 15 years old in 2011. Michael Harper was my crew chief, and we were racing at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and that was definitely probably the first crazy moment and definitely turning point in my career. Is when we won the Legends Pro National Championship in 2011 in Vegas, which was really cool.
All right, so you grew up in Wentzville, but as we know, if you want to make it in racing, you want to make it in NASCAR, you need to be in Charlotte or near Charlotte. Tell our folks out there the connection with Carl Edwards and how you ended up living in his house. Yeah, so Carl has a house in Concord, North Carolina. He obviously doesn't live there now, but it's actually really cool. So Carl and I have had a pretty good relationship, and when I was thinking about moving down there, you know, we were in contact with Carl and you know, kind of get an idea where, you know, we should live and stuff like that. And just happened to, he had a house and he wasn't living there anymore, so he told me if I could cut the grass, we could stay there. So that's that's actually what ended up happening, and so it was really cool. I actually lived there with Chris Buescher for about a year, and then Chris actually bought a house in Mooresville and then lived there for a while until my mom and sister moved down. So I could live in Carl Edwards' house if I just offered to cut the weeds. That's all it takes? I think so. No, it's Carl's a really good guy, and we've had a relationship with him, and it was really cool and really kind of him to obviously let us stay in his house that he used to live in, and you know, we definitely took care of the house and cleaned up for him as well. So NASCAR says, we're going to give you a shot. You're going to be in Martinsville. You're going to get to race in Phoenix. But I understand they give you the car and they say the only rule is don't wreck it, right? Is that the deal? Yeah, so you know, we were with Rick Ware Racing, which is you know, one of the, you know, lower funded race car teams. And you know, so I worked in the shop with those guys, got the car put together, and yeah, our first race was Martinsville Speedway, and you know, obviously that was actually when the chase just started for the NASCAR series. And you know, so obviously they've got 8 other drivers that are, you know, running for a championship. So my goal was, you know, to complete all 500 laps and you know, learn from Dale Earnhardt Jr., Chase Elliott, you know, Ryan Blaney. So all those guys were racing. I was racing against, and you know, so the biggest picture in my eyes was to run 500 laps and you know, complete every single lap and be there at the end. And that's what we did. Are you ever holding on to the wheel and you're like, was that Jimmy Johnson? Was that? How do you not do that? It was absolutely mind-blowing. Ever since I was 8 years old, I dreamed about racing against, you know, Jimmy Johnson, all those drivers I just listed. You know, I dreamed about racing against, and you know, to be racing against those guys and you know, racing around them was absolutely amazing. I talked to your dad about it, and I said, when you watch your son race, I'm sure there's some nerves. And he said the worst was the wreck that you had. This was in Kansas? Yes, sir. So that was 2016, I believe. Was definitely the worst wreck I've been in,
and it was a really hard hit. We actually unfortunately, I had to go to the hospital after that race and you know, get checked out. And unfortunately, I was okay. Just had a couple ribs out of place and a lot of bruising, but it was definitely a very scary moment in my racing career. But very thankful that you know, everything that NASCAR and the ARCA series have put forth to make these cars very safe.
And I'm sure every driver has a story, something that happened to them, but they can't really prepare you for that, can they? Because even though you're a skilled driver, you're obviously courageous to get behind the wheel. Does it still spook you a little bit when it happens?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. You know, it's definitely, you know, obviously on the back of your head at some point, but you know, the biggest thing that you can do is obviously, you know, be cautious on all of your, you know, safety gear and stuff like that. Make sure it's all up to date and make sure you're good on that end. But you know, obviously, you can't let it affect you, you know, racing wise or mentally. Just because then, you know, obviously you're not putting, you know, 110% effort into what you can do as a race car driver. So it was definitely very scary at the moment and stuff like that, but you know, definitely have to just kind of let it go by you, I guess, and you know, like I said, just, you know, be up to date on all your safety gear and make sure all that's as good as it can be. And
your brother Clayton is also an up-and-comer. Are you guys competitive, like when you get behind the wheel and
Absolutely.
race into the corner, Applebee's? Or?
Oh yeah, we're like you said, we were actually just racing last night. We raced Applebee's, but no, it's crazy. You know, definitely, you know, racing with a brother that's just as good as I am is awesome. So, you know, our goal since we were 8 years old is to both be competing at the NASCAR level, and we're not going to stop until we get there.
And so the key this year, find some sponsors, find some funding, and hopefully we'll see you again at the Cup. So you'll be racing all year, but the goal is to get back to the Cup circuit.
Yes, sir. So we're actually, my brother and I are actually working very hard to you know, find sponsorship to run at Gateway. Gateway has actually brought the ARCA series back, and my brother and I are working really hard to find sponsorship for that Gateway race. And then you know, actually 2 days later, the NASCAR Truck Series will be there as well, so we're trying to get something there as well. But definitely very cool to even have the opportunity, and to do it with my brother and my dad and my whole family is absolutely amazing.
Kyle, thanks for stopping by. We're going to remember that he's not a weatherman, he's a weatherman. Kyle Weatherman. He did get to meet Dave Murray, the weatherman, before we taped this segment.